What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here. Today, I want to talk to you about this comic book, X-Men Venom Poison X. This is a short little crossover between the ongoing Venom series and the X-Men Blue series. This is written by Cullen Bunn with artwork by Jacopo Camagini, Edgar Salazar, Ario Anindito, Alan Martinez, Matt Millar, and Dono Sanchez Almara. And this collects X-Men Blue Annual 1 and issues 21 and 22, and Venom issues 162 and 163. So this book, unfortunately, is a little bit of a mess for several different reasons. Number one, I do not like stories where you take a character who has a thing, and then you give that thing to a whole bunch of characters. Spider Island, everyone on Manhattan Island becomes a spider person, I guess. Hulked out heroes, everyone in the Marvel Universe becomes a Hulk. You have, what was that one recently? I feel like there's another one I'm missing here. I'm surprised we haven't had one where everyone in the Marvel Universe gets adamantium bonded to their skeleton. This is another example of that. You take the X-Men, you take Venom, you throw them in outer space, and you give everybody a symbiote. And this is not the only part of this story, which is actually my next complaint. I bought this thinking this was going to be a nice self-contained little crossover where the X-Men Blue characters would meet Venom, they would have an adventure, and then they would go their separate ways. That is not the case. This feels like it's 1/3 of a bigger story. At the end here, we end on a pretty huge cliffhanger where, spoilers, one of the X-Men has been separated from the rest of the group. The other X-Men are still with Venom, and they have to go back to Earth and do something, and it says continued in Venomized. So this is, I guess, a prologue to a bigger event, or it's part of a bigger event. I don't know. The only reason I actually bought this was because it is actually part of the X-Men Blue series. If this had just been a mini-series where you take the characters from X-Men Blue, throw them in there, and then Venom meets them, I probably wouldn't have bothered. But this is actually part of a series of issues in X-Men Blue that I was reading, and I wanted to read this because normally I really like Cullen Bunn's writing, and I like some of the art here quite a bit also. And when you read, I think, Volume 4 of X-Men Blue, you've got this C-level team of characters. Polaris, Jimmy Hudson, Hazako is in there, and then Bloodstorm. You got all these characters who are working together because the time-displaced X-Men from the past, they are in outer space teaming up with Venom. And if you skip this, if you just go into Volume 4, you're probably going to be a little bit confused. Why are these guys teaming up? Where are the time-displaced X-Men? So I bought this thinking that, well, I need to buy this so that I can read Volume 4 and figure out what's going on there. And I still feel like I was cheated. I feel like this is Chapter 1 in a larger narrative, and I don't have the rest of that narrative. And you might be saying, well, this is old hat, this happens to you all the time, you're always complaining about this, and I am, because these companies, Marvel and DC, are always doing this. They will put together a crossover, and the only reason that crossover exists is to lead into the next crossover. So this is unfortunately no exception to that. I did not much care for this story. There is more to it. There is, at one point, this group of characters. I guess I should talk about the plot a little bit, and then I can just spoil stuff. You've been warned, spoiler warning. So, Scott Summers from the past, he is Skyping with his dad, and then their spaceship gets boarded by these bounty hunters who have these alien symbiotes very similar to what Eddie Brock has, that makes him Venom. And then Scott gets the rest of the X-Men together and says, we have to go rescue my dad. So they kidnap Venom, and then for some reason he does not want to be with them. He doesn't want to help them with this, so they kidnap him. They go into outer space to try and find the bounty hunters. They do pretty easily, but then things go awry because I guess Kraven the Hunter has a symbiote type thing attached to him, and he's got these other little alien, little tiny symbiote type things. They're called poisons, and apparently a poison tries to eat symbiotes, I guess. And so one of them attaches to Jean Grey, and that's the story. Like I said, there's not much story here. I don't really understand what Kraven the Hunter is doing here. I had no idea what poisons were, and that's one thing. This is much more of a Venom story than it is an X-Men story, which is totally fine. Everything does not have to revolve around the X-Men. I like the X-Men, but everything doesn't have to be a big, huge X-Men event. But I bought this because it has issues of X-Men Blue in it. And then I come into this knowing absolutely nothing about Venom, and I feel like I haven't done my homework before the big final exam. I don't know anything about Venom. I don't know what the dichotomy is between Eddie Brock and the symbiote, and that's the one thing I thought I did know, because when you watch, say, the Venom movie, the dichotomy is that Eddie Brock is a good guy who is trying to pull this evil space demon towards him, trying to influence this thing so that it's not as evil, and then you've got this evil space demon thing that's trying to influence Eddie and make him a little bit more bad, and it's this constant tug of war. That's what I thought the dichotomy was between Venom and, or the symbiote and Eddie Brock. Turns out that's kind of the opposite, at least in this book. When the X-Men first approach Venom, Eddie has no interest in helping them, and the symbiote is actually the one saying, we should help these guys. Later in the book, the symbiote is narrating, and it mentions that Eddie does what he always does. He's protecting people. He's protecting these kids. And I'm thinking that's a little inconsistent. I feel like the only reason that Eddie refused to help the X-Men, so they are forced to kidnap him and bring him on this adventure, is so that we can have drama. And then every chance that Eddie gets, he's going to mention, hey, you guys kidnapped me. It's not really there for any character reason. It doesn't make sense with Eddie's character. I feel like if I go back and read a whole bunch of Venom stories, even recent Venom stories from like the last 5 years, I feel like he's not going to be the kind of guy who ignores people who need help. I think if someone came to him and said, my dad has been kidnapped, he would probably help them. It's really inconsistent just within this book, where we are told that Eddie protects people, protects innocents, and then he doesn't want to help the X-Men, but then also apparently he does want to protect people. I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense here. Then the symbiotes, sometimes they're called symbiotes, sometimes they're called Clintars, which is either a guitar or a really filthy sex act. Anyway, I don't really care for this book. Unfortunately, I feel like I was kind of duped into buying it because it is part of the X-Men Blue series, which until now I was really enjoying. And this is why I don't like crossovers in general. If I don't care about Venom, I'm not going to read Venom. You don't have to try and trick me into reading Venom because it's not going to work. If I enjoy X-Men Blue and I'm not reading Venom, and then you throw those two characters or those two stories into a crossover, all that I'm going to do is be angry that I don't understand what's going on here. I'm not going to go and buy all these Venom stories so that I can get caught up and understand what's going on in this Poison X storyline. I'm definitely not going to read Venomized because this was not incentive enough for me to go and read that story. I didn't care about what was going on here. I'm not going to care about what's going on in Venomized. This sounded really harsh, but it was just a few little things about this book that all piled up and made me really, really dislike this story. I am going to keep reading X-Men Blue. I do have the next volume, but unfortunately this volume was just a little bit of a drag. Really didn't care for it. There was pretty much nothing here that really worked for me. So I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you did, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back later in the week with another video. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of the day. Catch you later.